Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, guys. Today, we're going to talk about one of the reasons why I will not consider myself a Salafi anymore. Okay, so you might have been hearing me saying this in some of the videos. Okay, so this is just one of the reasons. Okay, when you look at Islam holistically, historically, okay, trying to make sense of the entire thing, you will see that for the majority part of the Muslim world, there were no Salafis. Okay, there were no Salafis. That's one of the reasons why. And what do I mean by this? So recently, I saw a Salafi sheikh. Someone called in from the subcontinent, like Pakistan or something, and the person was complaining. I think this person he became a Salafi, so he was talking about why are the people Hanafi here and why are they still becoming Hanafi and everything. They don't even listen to our arguments and stuff. And the sheikh went on to say something like he said Madhabiyya. I've never heard that before. I never like I've seen the Salafis around me like they criticize like the idea of staying to a particular school or something like that. But I've never heard that term before. So the Madhabiyya are the people in all the four schools that stick to their school no matter what. They stick to their school. Even if you bring the lead for them, they will still follow the opinion of their school. So these are the Madhabiyya. Now I now look like okay. Turns out for the majority part of the Islam, the Orthodox has been the Madhabiyya. The four schools have been the for centuries. These are the majority. Almost all the scholars that you know they will belong to the four schools. In fact, they used to attach it to their names. You see this guy Al Maliki, this one Al Shafi. They attach it to their names. That's how prevalent it was. Okay. Now, when I saw that, and like there was nobody saying it was Salafi at that time, because in each of the schools it was already presupposed. So the whole Salafi, what's it called? Idea that Kitab and Sunnah, okay? Kitab and Sunnah. What was it Imam Ahmad saying? Of course, it was Kitab and Sunnah. What was Imam Shafi saying? Kitab and Sunnah. So, inherent in the four schools, this idea is already there. It's not something you need to go and tell them that they need to use the Kitab and Sunnah. Of course, that's what they are doing. So, I now started saying, what are the four schools? And when I now realized what these four schools are, I now started to see like, okay, you cannot make them you cannot do that. You cannot push these four schools away because that they are actually the orthodox. And what are the four schools? Let me just tell you real quick. The four schools they have a particular principle of how do you implement what you get from the Quran and Sunnah. So you have the Quran and Sunnah and the tradition coming in. How do you understand that and use it and implement it? What are the exceptions? What if something new comes in? These are systems that have been there for centuries in Islam. They started starting from the imams of the schools. They were the scholars that were trying this, and there were many other schools. By the way, I'll make another video about the four madhabs. Okay, and within many more. Okay, and why I think Salafis, all you need to do is just join the queue, and become the fifth madhab. Don't insult the other madhab because I don't think normally that madhabs the formers that they don't insult each other because they have been there historically for a long time. They've learned to get used to each other in a way. But the attack that I see from some Salafis on the madhabs, to me, it doesn't make sense because they are the orthodox. And let me now go to the next point. It's about, I see it like a similarity. And by the way, this is why I will not say necessarily that Salafism is wrong. Okay, I will just see it as an attempt also. Just like the four schools, they are an attempt to understand the tradition. Salafis is also an attempt. They also have principles. Each one of the schools have principles that are not identical. And that's why there are four schools, not one. And Salafism also has their own principle. And they should just like tell us your principles and you join the queue. Become like the fifth madhab or something like that. You don't need to like push the other schools away because they will never agree with you. They don't see your principle as superior to theirs. All of us are using Kitab and Sunnah. So you cannot tell me, if I was a Maliki, you cannot tell me, hey, let's use Kitab and Sunnah. I'm like, of course, that's what we're using. So that's so. And now the similarity I want to point out. I see a similarity between the Salafis and the old. See, when I say maybe some Salafis are not like this, but when I see the old movement the way it is, and young people and the way they are are enthusiastic about some of these things, attacking their parents and stuff like that. I went through that phase also. Delete, delete, delete. Everyone is saying, hey, this is delete. Give me that delete. You don't understand that is similar to the way the Protestants are. The Protestants, let me just really quick. You have the Catholics. The Catholics are the Orthodox. Okay, they are the Orthodox and they are and Eastern Orthodox maybe. But early on, the Catholics were like the Orthodox Church, and they've taken the scripture and interpreted it and tell you what it means. So the Catholics will tell you what the scripture means, or what doctrine you have to follow, or which akida you have to believe. That's the Catholics. They will tell you this. The Protestants came and they started asking questions and they started saying, no, 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 we cannot take your interpretation. We have to go to the scripture directly. Let us look at the evidence, the scripture directly. We cannot use your own interpretation. Why should we follow your interpretation? You guys you have some kind of presupposition there. We need to look at the scripture directly. Let the scripture speak for itself. That was the whole movement of the Protestants. And they broke off from the Catholics. But guess what? The scripture, this is the problem with the Protestants and why they have many denominations. The scripture doesn't speak. They don't realize this. The scripture doesn't speak. If you allow everybody to be going to the scripture to look at it directly, they will come to different conclusions. And that's why you have many denominations in Protestantism. And what the Protestants now, some of them try to do is to create some kind of orthodoxy, of their own kind of Protestant orthodoxy, that you cannot, to be a Protestant, you have to believe this and this, which is, you cannot do that. Because once you said, let's go to the scripture directly, you have already let the genie out of the box. People will just go and look at the scripture sincerely, and they will come to different conclusions, and they will disagree with you, and then you have different groups splitting off. To me, I see the same with the Salafi movement, that let's look at the Dalil. Let's look at Quran and Sunnah directly. Let's look at it. Okay? But what you get is that when you start looking at the Quran and Sunnah directly, you will come up with different interpretations. You will. That's what will happen. And you also try to create some kind of orthodoxy, some kind of Salafi orthodoxy, that you are not Salafi. This guy is not Salafi. Because how can you have a different opinion from this sheikh? So you start to see some kind of firqa, how much they understand the things, the same evidence, you all come to these different conclusions. So when you now see this similarity, be like, okay, this is exactly what's going on, because the Orthodox for the Muslims are the four schools. So now, how do I understand this? Because I'm not particularly saying that I'm Maliki or Shafi or any of the madhabs, but it doesn't make the Salafis automatically correct. It doesn't. I think is that we need to stop the polemics, okay, and just see Salafism as another madhab, another attempt to understand the old tradition. But the problem with people is that they cannot handle their view just being one of the other views. They want it to be the objective view, and they will be so harsh and polemic about it that they will dismiss every other person as unknowingly deviating. Like, they will see you as somebody you are disagreeing with the evidence, whereas you're just disagreeing with their principle or their conclusions. So this is why the four schools, you take a dalil to them as a Salafi. You say, hey, take this dalil. They'll be like, no, yeah, give us, but we have a whole, it's bigger than what you think. There's a whole system that we use to interpret it. And within the four schools also, there are many discussions, many disagreements within the four schools, but at least there's a school there. But in Salafism, it's free. There's no school. So if there's no school, I think if this continues in the future, there will just be many, many more firqa that will come. And it's already happening. I know some people know this, but it's already happening. You see some people, they have a very strict understanding, and some people, they'll be like, that's too strict. You cannot say which one is strict, which one is not strict, because all of you are going to the Dalil, and they have evidence for why they are understanding this in a strict way that you disagree with. How do you convince them otherwise? You have to bring in some kind of, will you form some kind of authority to say, this is what we say? But anyway, anything you want to get from these guys, get this one thing. Everyone is interpreting. when you try to be like the one that is not interpreting, this is the rhetoric that was used by even scholars in the past, very early on in Islam. They use this rhetoric of, see me, I'm not interpreting anything. I'm just saying how it is. I'm just following it literally. I'm not. It seems to be, people like this. When you say, I'm not interpreting anything, it's just, this is what it says and I'm just following it. But people can see past that. This is the same rhetoric that was used, by the way, by even the Catholics when they were defending, when they were arguing about Akida and stuff. It's about, hey, we are reading the scripture clearly. Guess what? They had a whole baggage of Greek philosophy that they were using to interpret it without even knowing, because you cannot escape your own presupposition. You cannot escape it. Your own cultural binding, sometimes it clouds your judgment. It's the way you see things, language that you use, many other things like this. But anyway, this is one of the reasons I just wanted to share with you guys. Now, I'm not necessarily like when I say I'm not Salafi anymore, it's not like I'm against them particularly, but I'm against the polemics and the simplistic view that people use to understand the madhabs. Leave them alone. In fact, they have more authority to me. The madhabs, they have the majority. They are the majority of the Muslims in the world, right? Many people are already following them, and historically, they have been the majority of the entire Muslim world. So how do you deal with that? You cannot just push that away as, and this is a tactic I've pointed out in another video. The sheikh I'm talking about, I will not mention his name. He was saying something. He said something that really struck me. And this is human behavior. He said that that the majority are not always right. Why would you say that? Because he knows that the Madhabiyya, so-called Madhabiyya, they are the majority. He said, you see, the majority are not always right on every issue. I know that hadith where he says that the majority of my ummah will not be on misguidance. Okay? He said that that's not what it literally means, that these people, they don't understand Arabic. That what it means is that majority of my ummah will not agree on misguidance. And funny enough, that might be the right interpretation. But what I see is that anytime you find yourself in the minority, you will use this kind of evidence that the majority are not always right. But when you find yourself in the majority, you are the first one to want to clamp down on any difference. You want to clamp down on anybody having a different view, because you say, hey, look at the Ijma, look at the, what's it called? Jama'ah. The Jama'ah said this, and you want to, it's much safer to be with the Jama'ah or the Ijma. If you should do a kind of over entire world Ijma of Muslims, what would they agree on? It would be the madhabs. It's simple. You guys are not the majority. So it's in your principle. Sometimes you say this, that we follow the Ijma. Ijma of who? I've actually made this video before. Like, who are the scholars that we are doing the Ijma of? Okay? Your own scholars. So if you list the top 5 scholars you know, if they are from your own school and your own camp, that's not Ijma. That's your own particular school is Ijma. If we want to do the real Ijma, to be everybody will be represented, all Muslims in the world. Let's see what they will agree to, if you really care about that kind of Ijma. But no, even if you are 2 people or 5 people, you still believe if this is the haq, is the haq. It doesn't matter how many people are against it. So that principle, you cannot, when you now become the majority, you cannot now give up that principle. You have to allow people to be free like that. And that's exactly what will happen. So I don't know if some of you guys are still like Salafi. This is not an attack on Salafism at all. But just understand historically, it's much more holistic than you think. Your dalil that you think is clear, you've already interpreted it. You have your own set of principles that the schools definitely disagree with. And all you need to do is just study usul fiqh and see each school's principle and why they hold on to them and why it follows logically. When information from the Quran and Sunnah comes in, they get a different conclusion. Okay? So I hope you benefit from this. So see you guys later. Let me see what you think in the comment section. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.